fantastic way of entertaining your friends when you're having a pretty heavy dinner, you know, and you want to have like something a little bit, something after dinner. It's basically a digestive pastille. We're going to be making orange digestive pastille. Really simple. We're going to be using orange peel, some dried ginger. Everything is dried, right? Cinnamon, fennel seed, coriander seeds, and cloves. If any one of these herbs doesn't work for you because you don't like it, not a problem. Just omit it or replace it with something more fun. You know, I'm making these videos in the spirit of encouraging you to make gifts for your friends. It's something that you can, you know, gift by making it yourself, or DIYing the gifts, if you will. In a previous video, I was talking about, you know, it would be really lovely if you can support local businesses, small businesses, independent stores, Etsy, or, you know, people who make stuff on Etsy, or people who we feature on All Things We Love, which is this highly curated directory, a gallery of products and services that I personally use in my life, that we have pre-screened and we have a lot of confidence, and they don't greenwash, but the products are super beneficial for our health, and especially for hormonal health. I also want to remind you there's a recipe on, whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, we have a recipe that I was you know, playing around a lot with the vinegar, making infused vinegar. Later we were using that for an oxymel. So the steps is basically you first infuse apple cider vinegar with this whole bunch of beautiful herbs, and I was using here oranges and grapefruit and a lot of medicinal herbs, and then you strain it, you add some honey to it, and that's your oxymel, and that's really great for like time of flu. However, you know, one of the things I started doing with this, I just started making another batch, I'm on my second week right now, is to just make the vinegar, infuse your apple cider vinegar with these beautiful herbs and then straining it. And the number of friends were coming over, and I'll be like, hey, you know, here's a little teaspoon, try. And people go like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I started basically not making that into an oxymel, not adding any honey, but just making a spiced vinegar out of this. And then, you know, buying these really beautiful little bottles that are very decorative, and then putting that in and gifting that to people as a wonderful present from me, just for visiting my home. And it is, you know, something that you can use especially for salad dressing. So if you combine it with a bit of salt and olive oil, it really just gives you this incredible explosion of flavors in the salad. So I'm not going to be showing you how to use this recipe. Go and look up the recipe that's called the winter syrup, and that's where the infusion is presented on how to what to put in there. All right, let's go back to what we are here for, which is the pastille. So I'm gonna just make a small batch because you don't need a lot for this, and the pastilles are gonna be basically, let me show you the final product first. If we can do a zoom in for that, Kate, that'll be great. They are gonna be tiny, you know. In fact, if you can, you could even make them smaller. Why? Because they're so potent. There is such a strong sense of flavor coming from, especially if you're using herbs in the full form. And I always encourage you to look at all my spices, all my herbs, right? Everything is kept in a full form as much as possible. Ginger, ginger is in a chip form here, right? And the reason you do that is because they retain freshness a lot longer, and you only grind them before you use them. I hate buying spices that are already powdered, because then like within 3 months from the time you buy it, they lose all their potency. So this keeps much longer too, and is medicinally way stronger. All right, so the first thing we're gonna start off with, since it is an orange digestive pastille, we're gonna be using orange peel. I get my orange peel from Mountain Rose. And I do urge you to always buying organic orange peel. You don't want to be buying orange peel that's been sprayed on, because that's like, especially on the outside, is just really a bad idea. So the recipe that Jean is gonna pop on the Facebook, we don't have a recipe developed for this yet, but if you think you like it, and if you feel like it's something you would make, just post there saying yes to recipe. And then if we get enough yes to recipe, then I'll get my content team to develop that. So we're gonna be using 2 tablespoons, and Gina's gonna pop the recipe in parts. So parts basically mean, for example, if it's 2 parts here, 1 part here, 1 part here, half part here, it basically means 2 tablespoons here, 1 tablespoon here, 1 tablespoon here, half a tablespoon here, okay? Or you can do cups. Like for example, if you're making it for a massive family, it's got like 40 members away, I'm making it for 40 people, then we're gonna be doing, you know, a cup, a cup, a cup, half a cup, etc., etc. I'm sure you get the point. So, so that was orange peel, and that's what's gonna brighten up this lovely recipe. So let me just take a quick look at my notes just to make sure that I get the proportions right. So then we're gonna be using 1 part fennel seed. You know, how many of you here have been to an Indian restaurant, right? And then after dinner, the lovely server comes over and says, oh, here is like these fennel seeds and cumin and caraway, you know, and then give it to you on this beautiful platter, and then you pop that in and you chew on it, right? And all of that is there because of the digestive qualities it has. It enhances your digestive juices. And when you produce enough hydrochloric acid and a little different enzymes, the better the food gets digested. So then we're doing 1 part cinnamon. And so I'm just gonna eyeball it. I'm using cinnamon, true cinnamon, so Cinnamonum verum, not cassia cinnamon. And again, you know, if you like a lot of cinnamon more, just put it in. One of the reasons I like that in this recipe is because cinnamon is also helps you to control blood sugar balance, right? So a lot of people doing especially too many desserts after dinner, and then, you know, having some blood sugar issues, especially people with like diabetes and insulin resistance. And so cinnamon is a really wonderful way of balancing your blood sugar levels. Then we're gonna go on to ginger, dried ginger. Please do not use fresh ginger, because then it's gonna mess up the recipe. The reason why this recipe, you know, you can put it in a box and keep it there for a couple of months is because everything is dried, right? And honey doesn't spoil either. As you know, you can keep your honey for months in your cabinet. So half a tablespoon, I'm using tablespoons here, or half a part of dried ginger. And then we're gonna have, use cardamom seeds. And I'm only gonna use a quarter. Cardamom takes over things very easy. It's got a very strong flavor. Now, let me also mention why I'm using ginger in here is because ginger has got very warming. It's a very hot spice. And one of the reasons why we want to warm up your digestion is because in times when you're warming up your digestion, that's when actually a lot more digestive enzymes get produced, much more hydrochloric acid gets produced. In Chinese medicine, when someone is cold, they always have digestive issues, right? So it always kills me. I have to tell you, one of the funny things about moving to the United States is when I first got to Seattle and then New York, and I see people in the middle of this crazy winter, especially in New York, going out like shivering, and they're holding an iced coffee. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? Like, you're just shutting down your digestion even more. So having a cold drink before eating, really bad idea. That's why if you notice, like in Chinese restaurants, whenever you go, you always have a soup, first of all, to open up your digestion, and then you have a hot tea after dinners, again, to warm up digestion. So you can achieve the same thing with the temperature-wise using ginger. Okay, you know, I took out cloves, and I don't have that in my recipe, so I'm gonna kind of wing it with this one. And again, cloves are very strong, and they're kind of numbing on the tongue as well. So I'm just gonna use probably even less than a quarter. I'm gonna use like 1/8 of a tablespoon, just because it is such a potent herb. Okay. All right. So the next step is to grind it up, and I'm using the grinder part of my NutriBullet. You do want to achieve a very fine grind, and if we can do a zoom in, Kate, then you can see I still got a bit of debris I can see the cinnamon, so why don't I just give it another spin for just a few seconds. Okay. So the cool thing about using, so I'm going to transfer that to this bowl where then you can see what I'm doing and what is the kind of consistency that we are achieving here. All right. Ooh, it smells. I mean, you can just smell the spices just coming together. The cinnamon is coming across pretty strongly. If you're not a big fan of cinnamon, then just maybe back off or just don't put anything at all. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is, we're gonna start off with, you always wanna start off with the smallest amount of honey that's needed. In the recipe that I have, I put there 1 part honey, which is 1 tablespoon. Make sure that you're using honey that is really liquid. Can you see how liquid this honey is? Right, and if you have a jar of honey that's crystallized, that's perfectly fine. But make sure that it's not going to work in this recipe. But that's okay. What you do is just put it in. I don't put it in the microwave. Put it in a double boiler. Put it in your Instapot or hot pot for maybe an hour on medium, and it's gonna get into that consistency very quickly. So we're gonna start off with 1 tablespoon. And you don't want to put it too much, because when you put too much in, then you can't take it out. But you can always add on more to it, right? So using your hands, just going to get everything off that spoon. And what we're going to do is we're going to start working. Do we get a good zoom in on that? And at first it feels really dry and kind of pasty, and that's the way it's gonna be. But you will see that over time, it just becomes like this really wonderful kind of paste, but to a point where you can roll it, so it's not too liquidy. And that's the thing. Like if you put too much honey in, then you basically won't be able to roll it. If you put too little in, then it just becomes too dry. So always start off with, this recipe works with like the 1 part that I mentioned. As you can see, that's becoming really clumpy now, and that's exactly what we want. So why don't I just get that off my hands. And the next thing we're gonna do is, I find it really helpful to kind of wash your hands first. When you have not wet hands per se, but clean hands, when you don't have the stuff on, it's much easier to work with it. So let's do that. And it is such a strong flavor that even like the size I was showing you, I made that 2 days ago and I ate half of it already. So every time I'm standing in the kitchen, it's like, I'm gonna have some. Kate, come on over here and try it. See what you think. Try one. All right. What do you think? Delicious. What does it taste like?
Very spicy.
Very spicy. That's why you want to make it small. I would even make it smaller than what I have done, because especially if you're gifting it to someone who isn't really used to a lot of strong flavors, would you say, right? That can be a little intimidating, because a lot of times people are very used to like sweet and sour and such, but not as strong of a flavor as this. So, I prepared this little container here just to show you, this is what you can do as a gift, right? I just ordered that online, and it really costs, like for 6 of them, it's just like $2 or something. It's really cheap. And then I cut out a wax paper just to kind of fit this in, just to give it a little bit of like a nice feeling. And then what you can start doing is putting your pastilles right in here. It's almost like, like they having, basically digestive, those commercial ones, right? Pills, but in a much, nicer and healthier format. So I'm not gonna be rolling all of that. You get the point. And the other little touch that you can bring in to this is that when this is still kind of fairly warm and soft, right? These ones are not. These ones are already dried up. Is that you can then sprinkle that with like coconut, so make a coconut flour, so coconut flour, or you can, to give it a really nice pink hue, for example, you could do something like hibiscus or rosebuds, grind it up in a grinder and then sprinkle it on top. That will just give it a wonderful additional, so let me put that in here. So this is something that I would give my friend. This is a little bit more time consuming. So I would say, like, if you have 20 family members to give things to, this might not be the best idea. But if it's just a few, then, especially for people who struggle with digestion after their meal, this really makes it a wonderful post-dinner digestive aid. But also, because of the sweetness, it can satisfy the sweet tooth as well. Would you say? Perfect sweetness. I'm gonna just have one too. Jean, what questions do we have coming on? And how many of you here are gonna make this? How simple was that, right? If you determine, so letting you know, in case the spiciness is too much for you, make a smaller batch first, see whether that works for you. A lot of the spiciness does come from the ginger. You can either reduce it. I would say still keep it, if you can, just because that is really what warms up your digestion, gets your fire going in the tummy. Spiciness can also come from definitely from your cinnamon and cloves. Cloves are pretty potent. In fact, when you put too much cloves in, for those of you who maybe experimented before, you put olive essential oil on your tongue, it's a number. In fact, back in the day, dentists used to use clove oil as an anesthetic, as a local anesthetic. So it's pretty strong. All right, so let me just take a quick look on our page and see what we have. Jean, let us know if there's any questions coming in. I can see there's we have a bit less engagement today than the usual. Okay. All right, so we're getting a lot of hellos. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope this recipe was helpful and wishing you a wonderful weekend ahead, and I will see you next Friday. Bye for now.